The third, Halil gave the right of Al-Kaaba service to his daughter Haba, and appointed Abu Gabshan al-Khuzai to function as her agent whereof. Upon Halil's death, Qusay bought this right for a leather bag of wine, which aroused dissatisfaction among the men of Quza'a, and they tried to keep the custodianship of the sacred house away from Qusay. The latter, however, with the help of Quraysh and Kinana, managed to take over and even to expel Quza'a completely from Makkah. Whatever the truth might have been, the whole affair resulted in the deprivation of Sofa of their privileges. Previously mentioned, evacuation of Quza'a and Bakr from Makkah, and transfer of rulership over Makkah and custodianship of the holy sanctuary to Qusay. After fierce wars between Qusay and Quza'a, inflicting heavy casualties on both sides, reconciliation, and then arbitration of Yamur bin Auf, from the tribe of Bakr, whose judgment entailed eligibility of Qusay's rulership over Makkah and custodianship of the sacred house, Qusay's irresponsibility for Qusay's bloodshed, and imposition of blood money on Qusay'a. Qusay's reign over Makkah and the sacred house began in 440 AD, and allowed him, and Quraysh afterwards, absolute rulership over Makkah, and undisputed custodianship of the sacred house, to which Arabs from all over Arabia came to pay homage. Qusay brought his kinspeople to Makkah, and allocated it to them, allowing Quraysh some dwellings there. An-Nuza, the families of Safwan, Adwan, Murrah bin Auf, preserved the same rights they used to enjoy before his arrival. A significant achievement credited to Qusay was the establishment of An-Nadwa House, an assembly house, on the northern side of Al-Kaaba Mosque, to serve as a meeting place for Quraysh. This very house had benefited Quraysh a lot, because it secured unity of opinions amongst them and a cordial solution to their problem. Qusay, however, enjoyed the following privileges of leadership and honor. 1. Presiding over An-Nadwa house meetings where consultations relating to serious issues were conducted and marriage contracts were announced. 2. The standard. He monopolized in his hand issues relevant to war launching. 3. Doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba. He was the only one eligible to open its gate and was responsible for its service and protection. 4. Providing water for the pilgrims. This means that he used to fill basins sweetened with dates and raisins for the pilgrims to drink. 5. Feeding pilgrims. This means making food for pilgrims who could not afford it. Qusay even imposed on Quraysh annual land tax, paid at the season of pilgrimage, for food. It is noteworthy, however, that Qusay singled out Abd Manaf, a son of his, for honor and prestige, though he was not his elder son, Abd ad-Dar was, and entrusted him with such responsibilities as chairing of An-Nadwa house, the standard, the doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba, providing water and food for pilgrims. Due to the fact that Qusay's deeds were regarded as unquestionable, and his orders inviolable, his death gave no rise to conflicts among his sons, but it later did among his grandchildren. For no sooner than Abd Manaf had died, his sons began to have rows with their cousins, sons of Abd ad-Dar, which would have given rise to dissension and fighting among the whole tribe of Quraysh, had it not been for a peace treaty whereby posts were reallocated so as to preserve feeding and providing water for pilgrims for the sons of Abd Manaf. While in Nadwa house, the flag and the doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba were maintained for the sons of Abd ad-Dar. The sons of Abd Manaf, however, cast the lot for their charge, and consequently left the charge of food and water, giving to Hashim bin Abd Manaf, upon whose death the charge was taken over by a brother of his called Al-Muttalib bin Abd Manaf, and afterwards by Abd al-Muttalib bin Hashim, the Prophet's grandfather, whose sons assumed this position until the rise of Islam, during which Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib was in charge. Many other posts were distributed among the people of Quraysh to establish the pillars of a new democratic petite state with government offices and councils similar to those of today. Enlisted as follows are some of these posts. 1. Casting the lots for the idols was allocated to Bani Juma. 2. Noting of offers and sacrifices, settlement of disputes and relevant issues were to lie in the hands of Bani Sam. 3. Consultation was to go to Bani Asad. 4. Organization of blood money and fines was with Bani Taim. 5. Bearing the national banner was with Bani Umayyah. 6. The military institute, footmen and cavalry would be Bani Makhzum's responsibility. 7. Bani Adi would function as foreign mediators. Rulership in Pan-Arabia. We have previously mentioned the Qahtanid and Adnanid emigrations, and the division of Arabia between these two tribes. Those tribes dwelling near Hira were subordinate to the Arabian king of Hira, while those dwelling in the Syrian semi-desert were under the domain of the Arabian Ghassanid king, a sort of dependency that was in reality formal rather than actual. However, those living in the Hindar deserts enjoyed full autonomy. These tribes in fact had heads chosen by the whole tribe, which was a demi-government based on tribal solidarity and collective interests in defense of land and property. Heads of tribes enjoyed dictatorial privileges, similar to those of kings, and were rendered full obedience and subordination in both war and peace. Rivalry among cousins for rulership, however, often drove them to outdo one another in entertaining guests, affecting generosity, wisdom, and chivalry, for the sole purpose of outranking their rivals and gaining fame among people, especially poets who were the official spokesmen at the time. Heads of tribes and masters had special claims to spoils of war, such as the quarter of the spoils, whatever he chose for himself, or found on his way back, or even the remaining indivisible spoils. The political situation. The three Arab regions adjacent to foreigners suffered great weakness and inferiority. The people there were either masters or slaves, rulers or subordinates. Masters, especially foreigners, had a claim to every advantage. Slaves had nothing but responsibilities to shoulder. In other words, arbitrary autocratic rulership brought about encroachment on the rights of subordinates, ignorance, oppression, iniquity, injustice, and hardship, and turning them into people groping in darkness and ignorance, viziru, fertile land, which rendered its fruits to the rulers and men of power, to extravagantly dissipate on their pleasures and enjoyments, whims and desires, tyranny and aggression. The tribes living near these regions were fluctuating between Syria and Iraq, whereas those living inside Arabia were disunited and governed by tribal conflicts and racial and religious disputes. They had neither a king to sustain their independence, nor a supporter to seek advice from or depend upon in hardships. The rulers of Hejaz, however, were greatly esteemed and respected by the Arabs, and were considered as rulers and servants of the religious center. Rulership of Hejaz was, in fact, a mixture of secular and official precedents as well as religious leadership. They ruled among the Arabs in the name of religious leadership and always monopolized the custodianship of the holy sanctuary and its neighborhood. They looked after the interests of Al-Kaaba visitors and were in charge of putting Abraham's code into effect. They even had such offices and departments like those of the parliaments of today. However, they were too weak to carry the heavy burden, as this evidently came to light during the Abyssinian-Ethiopian invasion.